Welcome to the Inspired Women Podcast. I am your host, Megan Hall, academic, spouse, mom, and advocate for change. On this podcast, I hold space for women and non-binary individuals to share their stories. Warning, sometimes we chat about taboo topics and drop some F-bombs. Thank you for being here today and enjoy the episode. Hey everyone, today I'm here with Amy. Amy Taylor, pronouns she, her, is an MBA Mensa member. What's a Mensa?
It's the society for people who've ranked in 2 standard deviations or more above the average of IQ on an accepted IQ test, of which there are many.
God, that's awesome. Commercially licensed pilot who's flown cargo, charter, and been flight instructor. She's featured on Elle, L'Officiel, Sports Illustrated, GQ, FHM, Maxim, Muscle and Fitness, Men's Health, Women's Fitness, and even Playboy. Now in her 40s, she is just getting started. I hope to say that when I'm in my 40s too, and I'm almost there.
No, you're just a little one, but
I'm 38. I'm encroaching on.
You look 12 to me.
I do not look 12.
You do. You're so lucky. Skincare goals.
I have a 21-year-old daughter.
No, your skin, like you're gonna love that when you're my age. It looks great.
Thank you. It's probably because I haven't. I'm not like my sister who just spends her days out in the sun, and she's like, "I'm gonna have so many wrinkles when I grow up." Like, they are. When she's not in the skies or in front of a camera, you can find her staying fit, having fun with family and friends, and generally just enjoying this gift called life in Manhattan or wherever life takes her. Well, Amy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, brilliant Megan. I really appreciate you humanizing one person in my ridiculous world.
Oh, I love stories. I've been pretty burnt out. I'm gonna be honest. For everybody listening, I've been pretty burnt out on podcasts lately. Like where I'm just like, do I want to keep doing this? Because this is it's a lot of work. I do it all. I'm a one-woman show. I do it all on my own. And now I'm trying to figure out, do I want a personal assistant? Do I want a co-host? How do I take some of this off my plate? Because it is so much, especially because I told you, and I don't think I've said it on the podcast, but by the time people hear this, I will be teaching college courses. And so that's another thing that's going to be on my plate. So, anyways, my whole point is I love stories, and that's what keeps me going. And you have a really interesting story. When you applied, I was like, I have been wanting to have someone on to talk about this for so long. I literally put a call out last year, like, hey, will anybody come on and talk about this with me? And I got nobody. And then I see you apply, and I'm like, yeah, it's finally, I'm winning.
There was an explosion of podcasting COVID, and there is some contraction now. There's a lot of people hiring Fiverr or Upwork assistants to try to be and there's people doing fewer, and that's fine. If you quit or retire or come back or do fewer, it's up to you. And those assistants really do help take a lot off your plate, and they're amazing. Dude, Upwork and Fiverr, you can get somebody cheap who will do a lot for you.
I've been podcasting for over 7 years now.
Oh, you were before the
yeah, I'm OG.
Most people in my world won't talk to you. I was outed. We'll get into it. So kind of nothing left to lose. And I'm truly at the sunset of these things, and I want badly to try to do what small part I can to leave it better. And that's why I speak out. There are millions of people like me, but most of them won't speak to you.
Yeah. Well, Amy, then just kick us off. Kick us off wherever in your story you think is an important point. We didn't say it, but we're going to be talking about sex work today. And so I like I said, I've been wanting to have somebody on to talk about it, but I'm glad that you're willing to share, because I think it's a really important topic to talk about. Very relevant, because you were telling me earlier, there are far more people that do sex work than people think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the third rail of economic survival for a lot of people. I'm not saying that's a great thing, but it is. And I'm not really that interested in the aspirational utopian world that should be. I'm interested in the world that we are all living in and what can be done to ameliorate the suffering in that world. So whether you like sex work or not, it exists, and many people do it. Most only for a little while. I'm not a lot of weird lifers like me, and usually it's an economic issue at the entry. I come from an academia family like you. I went to Berkeley undergrad. That's where I first heard of it from a sorority sister. I had studied molecular biology at Cal and worked in biotech for a couple years after. Intended on maybe getting a PhD following my father's footsteps. He's a retired professor. Ended up pivoting and doing an MBA, which was great. But biology, it's a lovely field. I miss being around the brilliance. I loved working in biotech. I wasn't that great of a scientist, but there were economic issues trying to live in the Bay Area, in Northern California, and simply not making enough to survive. And so I had backtracked. I had heard of this from her at the time as a sort of conventionally attractive young woman. Dating options were and continue to be very plentiful for me. And I did choose to date a physician. He was 9 years older when I met him. He was finishing med school, and I did love him. We dated for years, but part of what I loved is that he made my life economically easier during undergrad at a time that I was not only broke, but had negative income. And so I guess, would you say gold digger or sugar baby? Maybe, but I look at it as fairly traditional. For most of human history, women didn't have our own money, and part of what we were attracted to in a man was his ability to provide. My situation was very much that. In college, I was super broke. He was, of course, also cute and also nice, but yes, he could take me to dinner and on vacations. And that was part of what he brought to the table, as the kids say. Right. So I kind of was already maybe into men that provided. And I wasn't being harmed by him in any way. There was no, people love to think that if a man has money and you don't, that you're being automatically controlled and abused. That was not the case. But then when we broke up, I suddenly again had economic need, was now in graduate school, moved to Los Angeles to do my MBA after being a mediocre scientist in biotech and pivoting. And I found myself heartbroken, no more rich boyfriend, and with a lot of bills. I was in grad school. Should I have dropped out? Probably. And I would have had only my undergraduate degree from Berkeley and biotech skills. I would have only been qualified to, again, work in biology somewhere, some lab. I did not want to do that. I struggled with animal sacrifice. You have to do a lot of it in biotech. I'm not against it. We all take medicine, but it was hard on my soul. And I wanted to stay in grad school. I wanted to get my graduate degree. So I remembered a few years earlier, my sorority sister had told me about this companionship thing that she would just go out to dinner with some rich guy in San Francisco, come back over the bridge to Berkeley with a few $1,000, and that they were she said they were usually really just nice tech nerds who were busy and rich. And I was like, dude, I'm going to do that. Right. I'm not ready for another relationship. I'm kind of heartbroken after years with this doctor guy, and I need money. And I kind of like successful men. They obviously like me, whatever. So I looked around for an agency like she had told me she worked for. Couldn't find one. They all hired models and actresses in LA, and I was just this little grad student. But one owner of an agency, she told me, you don't need me. You're super smart. You're obviously an extrovert. You like dating. You like people. You just do this on your own. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know how to do that. And she guided me to a couple websites. I did some research and spent a couple weeks looking around on the internet. And I mean, dude, it is not rocket science. I'm in Mensa. I got a 98% on the GREs, both subject and general, without even studying. I was hungover the day I took it. So learning stuff, I'm real dumb at a lot of things like common sense, and probably I don't have enough fear when I should. But in terms of RAM and intellectual processing speed, I got plenty. I'm a nerdy, smart kid. So starting being a high-end companion is not exactly like trying to get a PhD. You need a name and some pictures and an email address. And the rest, it's literally just dating. It's the same thing everybody's already doing. It's just dating. And so, yeah, I went on a website and built a profile, just like dating websites. And immediately, first client was a major Hollywood agent. Second client was a billionaire, off to the races. And it was just dating. So immediately my bills, I could pay rent, I could get a car, I could pay for grad school. And then my third client was a police officer, and that day sucked.
Oh my.
Yep. So the amp so in what I do, the amplitude between the good days and the bad days is simply too large, because the good days, you're on a private jet with a billionaire going to the Seychelles to go scuba diving for a week, and you're getting gifts and being paid, and he's super nice and actually sometimes good looking and everything else. And the bad days, you're being thrown in jail and your life's being ruined. And both of those things have happened to me. And so, yeah, I got arrested. I was naive. I trusted him. He was a damn good actor. And then I didn't, had to deal with a court case, had a massive expense. So then I was stuck in it, right? Because I got to now pay legal bills. And I was not, they wanted me ashamed and sorry. And I had only been on a few dates with these two that were rapidly becoming good friends. And yes, helping me pay for grad school, but they didn't mind. And so I didn't feel shame and sorry. I felt anger. I felt anger at the fact that the state, this particular county in California, told me I couldn't date who I wanted, even if that included them being successful and helping me out.
I mean, you weren't having sex though. You were just dating them, right?
Yes. And
So
and
that's
if I
illegal?
well, they assume it's sex. It doesn't matter what you tell
Oh,
them. And if I had wanted to have sex, I ended up sleeping with a couple clients over the years because I ended up liking them and wanting to. I'm a human. I got needs. I fuck who I want when I want for the reasons I want. And people fuck
as you
customers.
should.
People fuck customers and clients and neighbors, and we don't try to encourage that in the workplace anymore, but people still meet at work, whatever their work is. My father was my mother's professor in graduate school. Wildly creepy. They've been married 55 years and they're totally in love. Now they knew it was kind of weird, so they didn't date till his class, but that's how they met. I mean, people meet in all kinds of ways. I know hundreds of companions who are married to their former clients. All things can happen. And also it can be a one date and you never see each other again, and that's fine too. It's just dating. So yeah, I got arrested. This cop, Tom Giffen in Orange County, California. Fuck you, Tom. Uh, and he's retired now. And and then he tried to tell me that I shouldn't be a companion. I should date his rich brother, which seemed like, you're trying to like control my life now too, sir. Like, also, even if there was a rich brother, he might have still been lying. I have no idea. The dude was a great actor. He should have been in Hollywood. So it was so weird though that he like wanted to be Captain Save-A-Ho, and like I went to jail for like 2 hours. The sandwiches are no good. They let me out, and then I have this court case, and it all got resolved. Took a couple years, but I doubled down. I think some of us have a bit of an anti-bullying thing. Like, I really hate a bully. It incenses me. And when the state acts like a bully, like, I have a real problem with that. I have no problem with laws. I'm a pilot. I obey all kinds of laws in aviation. It's a very structured world, but they make sense, right? Like, you stop in your car because you can't have anarchy on the roads. People will die. Um, but a law that tells me that I can't date who I want when it's literally who I'm attracted to never made sense to me and never will. So I reacted with a big fuck you to the state and the system. And I guess other people crumble and obey the state, but I looked at it as, they wouldn't do this if I was a man. They wouldn't. It was a way in which the state was infantilizing me as a woman and pitying me and saying I don't know my own mind and my own body, and I should behave and do all the things women are supposed to do and not be free and independent. And they still do that every day. I get hate on the internet that's like, how dare you live this way, you Jezebel witch. And all I wanted was to be free. I've never wanted to be married. I've never wanted to be a mother. All those things are beautiful. Most people do them, and that's great. But my dreams have been about flying planes, shooting guns, and being free. I have an independence kink, I guess. And be that as it may, the state pushes very hard for people, particularly women, to not live freely. And so that's been, my work has allowed me to have a much freer and more independent life, but there has been incredible cost. So yeah, the entrance was economic, as it typically is for sex workers. not just in the form I chose, but online sex workers like OnlyFans or strippers or porn stars. It's typically economic need. And even with the suffering and the other side of the coin, the fun, it has provided financial independence for me. It has allowed me to buy homes and help support my family and fund my education. And but it's also been so tough. I've been kicked out of banking and housing, and we get our credit cards shut down, and even forms of sex work that are not attacked by the state, that are 100%, legal businesses regulated, like the porn industry. They lose access to financial systems, banking and credit cards and things, even though they're supposed to be part of the economy, but they're still shunned and stigmatized. So yeah, it's got its challenges and its barriers. And it continued to for several years afterwards. I just had great dates, traveled the world, went to all over every continent except Australia, Antarctica, met the most wonderful people. But then I had, for instance, stalkers, some of the bad things that can happen. I had a pimp wanting me to work for him and actually sell sex. And I said, no, absolutely not. Back to the me hating a bully thing. And that man made life very difficult for me. He outed me to my family. I had to sue to deal with the online repercussions of his doxing. And then when I won that lawsuit, he got so angry, he tried to kill me.
Oh,
And I had
wow.
to, and he went to prison it's a gentleman named David Elms. And if you Google David Elms murder, you can read about it. He tried. And so I was indeed naive that when you get into sex work of any form, there are managers that want to make money off you because there is a lot of money in it, sex
Mhm.
sells. And some of these managers are not ethical people, and that's a real problem. I view that as a labor issue, though. If sex work were given more legitimacy, you could address these issues more easily in courts of law. A lot of times what happens with pimps and other managers is that sex workers don't report them because the stigma and shame. If you go to law enforcement or you launch a lawsuit, um, for instance, lawsuits are public record. So if you sue somebody, you just outed yourself,
Yeah.
right? That's a real problem. Lawsuits should not be public record in every case, but they are. It's the law. And certainly a lot of sex workers will not go to law enforcement because they were worried the law will turn on them or just refuse to help them. And that does happen. When I sued this pimp who outed me, 4 judges threw my case out of court, saying that he might be a bad person, but so was I. And luckily, I had the world's most persistent lawyer, a friend of mine from college, who lacks the fear gene even more so than I do, and he just wouldn't give up. And we finally got a good judge, and the rest is history. Um, but yeah, that is a real challenge in sex work. I think if you know about like the Andrew Tates of the world, there
Ugh.
are, yeah, I agree. There are OnlyFans managers getting very rich off of the abuse of this asset that is women's beauty and sexuality, on or offline. It's a real problem.
I'm just wondering how OnlyFans, and maybe you don't have this answer, OnlyFans is legal, but other forms of sex work are not, because it feels like people are doing things on OnlyFans that people do outside of it, but outside of it, it's illegal.
Well, yeah, I mean, quasi legal is interesting. For instance, in the state of New York, where I live, like being a dominatrix, like having a dungeon where beat submissive guys and do all that stuff, it's legal. In other places, it's kind of quasi legal. And I think the law usually cares a lot more about contact versus no contact. And that's stems from morality issues, which stem from disease control issues, right? So if you're not like strippers who there's rules about how close they could get in different states, like in Phoenix, Arizona, they have to wear those nipple pasty things in case they're
Yeah, I
lacking.
live in Connecticut, and I think they had depends. From what I understand, it depends on if they're serving alcohol or not. So if they're serving alcohol, you have to have like a certain number or a certain amount of clothing or even pasties on. If you're not serving alcohol, there can be less clothing. So that's
Yeah,
how
because
it
when
is in
people get
Connecticut.
drunk, it's harder for them to have the faculties to obey the boundaries. And ask any stripper. I've never been a stripper, but I know lots of them, and clients violate the boundaries all the time. Um, so in LA, there are a few dungeons with professional dominatrixes and professional submissives, but in that there's security, there's cameras, so like it's a little safer than like if you were the worst would be like a professional sub who goes to some stranger's house and he can beat you. That would be a job you would not want to do because you'd be dead in a week probably.
Yeah.
And the reason, like sex for money, prostitution, we don't like that word because a prostituted woman, it refers to what the state has called her and takes away her agency. So, and it implies that you could never be a sort of happy hooker. You could never be doing that of your own volition, which is a lie. Many hookers are quite happy. But we have a tough time thinking about that because, women are children and infants, and if they're fucking for money, it must be because they're slaves and being forced to. It could never be because they like to. And for
Lord
real,
forbid we like sex.
I mean, right? Like, no, for real, there is slavery, there is trafficking, there are abuses, and all of that is horrible. And I think we go after that with all the force in the world. Like, I think the only good pimp is a dead pimp, truly. And so I agree with the law on going after anybody who's coercing and controlling somebody into doing sex work, either on or offline. But usually the criminalization goes after the ones that are full contact. And those laws, yeah, they stem from disease control. If you look back in history, like in the medieval ages, sex workers were punished very harshly because there was a lot of stuff around disease. Same in the Victorian era, there were a lot of strides made in medicine and testing. And then there was a big panic about disease. It's not wrong to want to control communicable diseases. Of course, and because we don't want to spread disease. However, it turns out if you look at the data that criminalization does not reduce disease spread. And in fact, in many ways, in many cases, it actually increases it. The way in which that happens is a little counterintuitive. When you criminalize like in-person sex work, let's just call it prostitution to use a pejorative word, things like condoms can be used in evidence in court case. So prostitutes stop carrying condoms. So then they don't have as safe as sex. So then there's more disease. They don't, when it's criminalized and clients, like customers know that the prostitute is afraid of the law, the customer will feel more entitled to be pushy and refuse to wear condoms because it feels better for him. Most clients hate condoms. Ask any sex worker. It is always a fight. Brothel workers in the US, in the counties in Nevada in which it's legal, they get medically tested. There are cameras and security. They feel very empowered to demand things be safe. And it's in their vested interest because they're getting medically tested every week. They're not going to sacrifice their safety for some asshole who wants to feel you, blah, blah. So they have much better outcomes from the limited data we have in a short time about their health than areas in which it's criminalized. There's a Calcutta brothel area study where when they decriminalized prostitution, they not only found like 1,200 underage trafficking victims. And the reason was because people felt at liberty to go tell the cops about abuses because they weren't worried about going to jail anymore. So they found the underage enslaved traffic victims that they would not have found. They also, HIV rates have been going down like 1% per year for 5 years now because the environment, when it's not criminalized, the workers feel more at liberty to demand safety because they have rights. So when people think, oh, we don't want more disease, which is logical, let's criminalize our way into more safety medically, they have it backwards. They're driven by a spiteful desire to punish their way into the outcome they want, but they're getting it wrong. They're getting it backwards. It's a logical fallacy that you can criminalize your way into less disease transfer. It's exactly incorrect. But, people are not always logical, right? They're emotional and they see something they don't like. Disease spread. Nobody wants that. And they go, well, let's just criminalize our way away from that. And it's wrong. It doesn't work.
So how you mentioned earlier that you were outed to your family. How did your family react to knowing?
That sucked bad. So yeah, it was, so I had met somebody in 2006 that I fell for, and not a client, it was a neighbor, and was not thrilled with what I did, but allowed me to be honest. And we fell in love, and we were gonna I was ready to retire, and we were gonna try to make it work. And I hadn't been outed, so we figured he had a regular corporate job. So we figured we could just like other colleagues of mine who got luckier than me and didn't get outed, we figured we just retire me and hopefully people wouldn't find out, and I'd start a new career and with my savings, and I would that'd be it for me. And we accidentally got pregnant. So we were like, okay, let's make this work. And I still ran my pay site, but I didn't tell anybody that I actually wasn't seeing clients. I was retraining for a new career. I was getting my flight instructor licenses. I actually had moved to another city to retrain for that. And I just didn't tell anybody. And I'll be goddamned if at that time where I thought I'm going to get the guy and retire and it's all going to be fine, fate has a way of laughing when you think it'll be perfect, right? But they say man plans, God laughs. Somebody bought my birthname.com and they built a URL that was identical to my pay site, amytaylor.com. However, the text was changed on each of the pages, and every page was a different horror show of outing me. There was my name, my address, stuff about my college experience at Berkeley for some reason, information about my parents, and then one of the pages had an email address, the truth about Amy Taylor at Yahoo. I clearly have PTSD. I still remember, right? And it said, if you don't email this email, Amy, things are only going to get worse for you. So somebody sent me this website. I was devastated. I didn't know who had put it up. I emailed that address. I didn't know who it was. I was like, is this a colleague who's jealous? Is this a client? Did I like take a deposit and forget to go see somebody? Like, did I piss somebody off? Like, who is this? And I didn't know. I called my lawyers, and the only way to reveal the private registration on a domain is with a subpoena or a lawsuit, criminal police report or a lawsuit. And so as this was up longer and longer, I lost my job. I had a part-time job at the time. The boyfriend, they sent paper copies to his work. And he was so scared. He didn't want to be known at his work as the guy whose fiance was this ex slut. So he dumped me. And I miscarried my 17-week-old unborn son, who I hope I meet again someday. And I was consumed by revenge. They sent paper copies to my parents in Northern California, who did not speak to me for like 2.5 years. My mother had to go to a lot of therapy. My father is still terrified for me every day. They came around again because they love me, and that is a grace I don't deserve and can never repay. And I was consumed with getting justice because I had lost everything. I'd lost the guy I loved and my job and my child and my family. Christmas sucked that couple years. I just flew. I just flew in a plane every day. I immersed myself, there's no phone and you're in the sky. That's what I did. And every other day was phone calls with my lawyers. And again, back to the me hating bullies. I didn't care how much it cost. I didn't care if the police wanted to arrest me for a misdemeanor calling me a hooker. I didn't give a fuck. Call me a hooker. It's a misdemeanor. I don't care. So I did both. I filed a police report and I sued. When somebody's going after your safety, you can sue as a Jane Doe, which I did. And I didn't know who I was suing yet. But when we got the registration, it turned out to be this pimp who had wanted me to work for him, David Elms. And I was so dumb. I called him because I still had his number from when he was trying to force me to work for him. And I didn't know who he was. So I had mistakenly given him my number. And then he had been trying to coerce me. And I told him to fuck off, but I still had his phone number. I called him and I was in the grocery store. I remember I was getting salad. And I said, I know you did this to me. And he said, I didn't, but I know who did. And if you come to my house and fuck me, I can get it taken down. He was still trying.
Oh, Lord.
And so I said, I'm going to destroy you legally. And I did. I sued him and I won. I told you this. And then he tried to kill me and I put him in prison. And then I cobbled back together my life, and it's never been the same. It's cost me friends and housing and shame and stigma, and people often don't know what to make of me, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. But my family came back. They hate what I've done, but they love me. So, I disappointed them, but I think we disappoint the people we love and they disappoint us. And you love somebody, that's true intimacy, family love and intimacy when they know the worst of you and they love you anyway. And
Mm.
so we are still a family, and David Elms did not destroy our family. He tried, but my family is stronger than that. And my sister is in politics in California, and she has actually been brave enough to speak out in the fight to reduce the harm towards sex workers. She's actually told people when she's felt safe that someone she loves is a sex worker. See if she might even be able to be part of the efforts to reduce harm to people like me. So maybe that'll happen as a result. Maybe something good will come out of it all. I don't know. I hope so.
So, despite all that, what made you continue on with sex work, even though you had all those issues that happened? You're like, I don't fucking know.
I mean, I've paid the piper. What am I going to do now? I've already been branded for life. It's all over the internet. Everyone who I've been lost everything. So what, I'm going to now go get a banking job? Nobody's going to hire me. I mean, what, once you've paid the fiddler, you may as well dance. This is the thing about criminalization too. It's the same thing. They think it's going to get you to quit. It does the opposite. It makes you stuck in it. Because now, so yeah, I mean, I do other things. I am a flight instructor. I have flown cargo. It has never been the only thing I've done. Much like a lot of people, I hyphenate. I have modeled a lot because I had a conventionally hot body and they wanted to put it on pictures. Okay, fine. But given that I have paid the price and I will until the day I die, I could change my name and hope that people don't Google. I know thousands of sex workers who do that. They run from the past, and as it gets further in the past, they kind of just bury it like people who have other skeletons. But I don't tend to react that way. I think it's the feisty Chihuahua energy. I am not ashamed. I didn't hurt anybody, and I didn't deserve to be hurt so badly. Not by David Elms and not by the system. I just dated, and that's something every single person does or did. And so and then because I know millions of sex workers after all these years, I want it to be less awful for them than it was for me. I want it to be better for them. And maybe that's just ego, but maybe that's some retroactive need to try to make something good out of this thing that became. But for whatever reason, if I can do any small part to try to make it a little less nightmarish, because there are pimps that go after the young ones because they're marketable, and I want that to stop. And I know it happens all day, every day. And that is an indirect result of the stigma and legal attitudes toward sex work. The reason these people thrive and abuse people is because it's an underground business and it's stigmatized. When people say that an OnlyFans girl is a disgusting throwaway person, what happens to her psychological health and her options in life makes her primed for the abuses of a pimp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want that to stop, and so that's why I speak about it, because there's nothing left for me to lose, and I'm not going to leave this industry after, yeah, all the bad stuff, but also a ton of glamour, all the stuff you see, the private jets, the suites, the shopping sprees, the Michelin star dinners. Yeah, that was every week of my life. Yeah. Dating billionaires is exactly as amazing as you think it is. It is better. I'm sorry, it's better. And I'm not going to just leave it after all that and be like, fuck all y'all, good luck. I'm not going to do that to the millions of people I know coming up after me. That'd be terrible. So
you're a trailblazer.
I don't know. I mean, there's stronger women than me that have spoken out in the 70s. The entire umbrella term sex work was coined by some amazing women who wanted unity between all the people kind of monetizing their sexiness in various ways. So smarter and better women than me have spoken out and do. There's some brilliant ones. Kristen D'Angelo in California, Mistress Matisse in Seattle. oh, I've forgotten her name. She's a writer. She's so smart. The old prose is her Instagram, and she's beautiful and smart. But anyway, there's better speakers and smarter people than me that are doing good work. But yeah, why do I not just bail and try to run from my past and reinvent myself? Because I think that's chicken shit. And I got a lot of flaws, but I'm not a chicken. I wish I was more of one. Like, same thing that was easy for me to spin a plane when I got my CFII license. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of anybody or anything. I probably should be.
I mean, I was just thinking, I take it back. This is not the first time we've mentioned sex work. We mentioned it one other time. And it was because we were talking about kink with Mistress Cat. And she talked about how she does the phone sex. But
Yeah.
yeah. And I just that just clicked in my head when you said Mistress. And I was like, oh, we had Mistress Cat on. And she didn't go into depth about it. But now I'm like, oh, this is not the first time we've mentioned it. But I did want to have a whole episode on sex work.
Yeah,
But
BDSM is a huge area of sex work. There's a funny arc between a lot of younger women start as strippers. I didn't happen to, but that's pretty common because you're super cute and your skin's tight and you dance a lot and those heels, you can stand them because your feet don't hurt yet.
yeah.
And then you become like an escort or something, or now OnlyFans, which is very new and it's great. It's safer and good for these girls. And then when you get a little older, you've got money, maybe it's okay if your income goes down a little, but maybe you still want to work a little, but you've got savings. You become a dominatrix into your like 60s and 70s. Dominatrixes you can be quite old. So this sort of career trajectory I've seen quite a bit. And yeah, I look like a dominatrix, right? Dark hair, pointy eyebrows. So I've done a fair amount of beating up men for tens of thousands of dollars, and I've done it. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. And so that episode was actually very fascinating. We recorded it in her dungeon.
Did you? Nice, nice.
Yeah, I mean that anybody who goes back and listens, because I'll link it in the show notes. The sound quality wasn't as much as as nice as I would have liked it, because it was really echoey in there. But it was it was a great episode, and really there are people that make some like paid dominatrix, and you've mentioned this, paid dominatrix, paid submissive. It is a very fascinating thing.
Well,
it really is.
You in psychology, you try to understand people's minds, and kink has existed for a long time and probably always will. And it's psychologically very interesting where it borders on abuse, BTK killer kind of people. That's obviously not okay. But yeah, the saying is, don't yuck someone else's yum. So I've seen a lot of things that are not my vibe and I don't understand, but the world is a very diverse place. The fascinating thing of psychology, your world, is it's a study of the diversity of human minds and therefore experiences. And there's a big world out there. Mother Nature is a dice roller. She makes a lot of possibilities. And so when systems, legal or religious or societal, try to stifle diversity, they're directly working against Mother Nature. And that's why they don't work. That's why legislating any vice does not work. That's why the war on drugs failed. That's why trying to get rid of gambling doesn't work. You can only mitigate and harm reduce because Mother Nature loves diversity. And no matter what any system does, it will never undo that. So yeah, why do people like BDSM? I don't know. People like a lot of stuff. Yeah.
But as long as it's consensual and ethical, that's all that matters to me. Like,
keeps it spicy. My sister and her husband, they've been married for 26 years now. They got into a bunch of that stuff. They're trying to keep it spicy. They've been together forever. It's cool. Sometimes you do something and you're like, my one ex, the one that I really loved that got pregnant with and didn't work out. He's a good dude. He lives in the Pacific Northwest now, but he liked dirty talk a lot. And so I would need like an arsenal of like things to say. Sometimes I'd go online and read to like get inspiration. And sometimes I would run out of stuff to say. One time we're fucking, as you do. And I said, I didn't have anything else. And so I said, fuck me, you fucker. And then he started laughing. He's like, yeah, not hot. That's not working for me. Like, I'm sorry. I don't have anything. Sorry, sir.
So what does the future look like for Amy Taylor?
Well, I'm very much enjoying Manhattan. I don't run around much. I don't need to or want to. I am enjoying doing some broadcasting. I am gonna continue to tell my story. I'm just one more soul, but the world's not gonna shut me up. You can hate my life story, but I'm going to force people to show that to see that we exist. And after I've enjoyed Manhattan for a while, I will almost surely need to move back to Northern California to be near my parents who are aging,
Oh,
to help. I can't leave that all to my sister. She'll kill me.
right.
And and so I suspect my older years will culminate in the Bay Area where life sort of started. We moved there when I was quite young, and that will be just fine. I know that I will have love. I'm an extroverted chatty bitch, as you can see, so I will not be lonely. I go outside with my dog or go to yoga and I make 3 or 4 friends any day I want to. So whatever love looks like, it might not be a man, it might be several men. I might be an old slutty lady. I don't know. Um, but it might just be a lot of friends. I hope it includes health as long as that's possible and travel. I still get asked to model a lot. There's a whole genre of gray modeling. I'll continue to do that as long as it wants me. I'm thinking about adding my rotorcraft rating. I only fly fixed wing. I'd like to add rotorcraft. So I probably will continue that as long as my health holds up for the medical exams. And I hope to be happy and free. But like any of us, right?
Yeah. I love that. You've created this sounds like a beautiful life of freedom. Um, there's so much experience you've been able to have by this life that you've built. And you sound like such a badass. You're like, I'm gonna fuck everybody up.
Yeah, freedom was my mast in the wind. I when my sister got married, I got the creeps at her wedding. It seemed weird, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but yeah, freedom has been my mast in the wind, and I have, knock wood, achieved it at great cost, perhaps too much cost. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm wired this way. It is the life that I wish I could have found this kind of life a different way, but I do have freedom. My grandmother was very free. She was a little bit famous industry. She passed away now a few years ago, but she was unmarried, free, had a zillion friends, had a major career and fame. I think I maybe wanted to be like her. She was not a high-end companion that I know of. She might have been, but I don't think so. Maybe. But yes. I mean, look, some of the most fascinating women in history have been women who were not well behaved. I can't recommend the path I chose. The costs are too high. The danger was too great. The damage to my reputation has been tough every single day because society's stigma is a real thing.
Yeah.
And, and if
That's
you
my
live,
research interest of choice, by the way.
thank you. And the costs to mental health and the costs to daily life are too high. And if we're going to have a rightward conservative swing in this country, I pray to God not. That's going to get worse, not better. I don't know where the future is. I'm glad it won't be my problem. I'll be dead in a few decades, thank God. Uh, but for whatever it's worth, some people like freedom, and I don't know that you can force us to be different. I think people are different, you know?
Yeah. So, as we wrap up the podcast today, Amy, what would you like to leave the Inspired Women audience with?
I'd like to say thanks for listening. And I know that you guys, like me, are also excited for what Megan's doing. I can't wait for more of her research down the road the next few years. And I think women like you, being curious about the world around you, wanting to tell stories, hear stories, do research, explore this whatever this is that we're all doing for a few decades that makes no sense. I think you are this sort of truly inspirational woman. And that in it itself is an act of independence in a world that doesn't even always let women do what you do either. So I'd like to tell all the people listening that you should support women doing cool shit because it makes the world more interesting. Like, you don't want a bunch of women being boring and lame. So just get a little more okay with diversity. Control is just your childlike ego Try to let people live. Just let people live. It's not that hard.
Don't yuck your yum or someone else's yum, right? Just let people live. Let people do the things as long as it's consensual and ethical, and
if it's not hurting you, which it literally isn't,
and it's not hurting someone else.
Yeah,
we're good. That's how I feel, is if you're not hurting other people, hopefully not yourself, just do you, right?
and it makes the world more interesting. Like I live in Manhattan. I walk down the street, I see 10,000 people where I'm like, nope, but that's okay. It's great. It's great if they're not hurting me. And so this is a wide world. And if they're listening to you, I know that means they're fascinated by different stories. And I have the same kind of curious mind. And so I tell them to continue to be curious. Your curiosity has a lot of value.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review. Follow us on social media at Inspired Women Podcast, both on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, The Inspired Women Podcast.